Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the OIC contact group meeting that was held on the issue of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So the foreign minister in fact gave some statements. In fact, he mentioned that India intensified rhetoric against Pakistan, also threatening our sovereignty through military aggression. Further stated that Indian state terrorism in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, innocent protesters being killed on almost daily basis. Then another important area which we'll be talking about is India enforcing Modi's settler scheme in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and we'll also be talking about the role of the international community as they say that the international community must take action against Indian barbarism. So we'll be talking about these important issues in our today's program. Let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us on my right is Dr. Asma Shakir Khwaja Saiba, expert on foreign affairs. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your time. And we have with us Yasir Janjua Saab, who is a security analyst. Thank you very much, Janjua Saab, for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll also be talking to Shahid M.G. Kiani Saab, former ambassador, senior diplomat. He is going to join us on Skype. Thank you very much, Kiani Saab, for your participation as well. Now, I'm starting off from you. Now, this rhetoric, the Indian rhetoric primarily against Pakistan, that whichever platform is available, no matter who is standing there, they would malign Pakistan. That's a simple philosophy. And give wrong data about Pakistan to the international community. This has been happening for a very long time. And now, the most aggressive part regarding that is that every day we are witnessing this LOC violation and even LAC violation with the Chinese also. But since that is their issue, so we'll be concentrating on ours. What exactly do they need to do? What exactly is brewing in their mind? What is Modi up to?
If we see right now what is happening in India, India's geopolitical situation and the strategic scenario in the region, we can see that Modi on external front or on international borders, Modi has a failed foreign policy. And this foreign policy of aggression or aggressive posturing is counterproductive for Modi. Like we can, as you mentioned, Modi, India's relations with China, with Nepal, with Bangladesh, with Pakistan, almost all the neighboring countries or countries in the region are not great, or even I would say not normal these days, or for past few months. And then when we see the internal front, Modi's domestic policy and Modi's COVID response policy is also a failure. What Modi did in Kashmir for short-term gains is resulting into long-term losses for Indian image in international community and Indian foreign and defense policy. So whatever promises Modi made with the Indian public that they're revoking the status of Kashmir or Article 370 would gain so many benefits and all those things and economic development, but Indian economy has faced severe losses, one because of the Modi's Kashmir policy and then because of the COVID issue. So if we see all this scenario, the trends of Modi or Modi's, if we see how Modi reacts in such situation when he's been entangled in his own policy failures, then Modi opens an unnecessary border or issue or a battle with Pakistan, whether it is in the media or in the head of Modi, like the issue of surgical strikes. But Modi use it to divert Indian public's attention and focus from the real issues to these non-issues which are mostly in his head. So that is why if we see, as you mentioned, the recent or during past few months, the violations on LOC by India are one of the...
Is it the Indian frustration primarily?
It is the Indian frustration, but it is a tactical move by Modi to divert the attention of Indian public and to gain some psychological or and I would say some fake false trophy, war trophy for Indian public that,
All right.
okay, forget about our the rest of the failures, what you have done to you and your economy and your politics and the social fabric and all mess we have created on internal and external sides. Just forget about them and see what we have earned through aggression or this false surgical strike on such issues.
Absolutely. Now, Ranjora sir, talking about the Indian economy, the latest update says that it's 34% negative, shrinking. I mean, just imagine 34%. And you're talking about the Indian economy, that is a huge one. At the same time, look at the role of Indian media. I think they are so influenced by the Bollywood that they just want to, show everything in that contrast. And the interesting part is that, I mean, the way they are comparing their jets and air force with the Chinese, it seems as if, they really want that the war should happen, sir.
Thank you, Faisal. First of all, talking about the Indian economy, you talked about shrinking by 34%. At the same time, Indians have upped their spending, military spending this year by 9%. Look at the abject poverty in India, and they are increasing their spending on military hardware, whereas they have issues which are even more grave, much more grave, especially in this COVID era, when they are the second most affected country in the world, bypassing
all right.
Brazil even.
Sir, if you allow me, sir, we have been just joined in by the Foreign Minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi Sahab. Shah Sahab, Assalamu Alaikum ji.
Ji, walaikum salam.
Shah Sahab, thank you very much for taking out your time and talking to PTV World. Now, sir, first of all, would you like to give us the update regarding the OIC contact group meeting on Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, sir?
Let me begin by thanking the OIC contact group. Whenever we've asked them to convene on this very important issue for Pakistan, which is the issue of illegally Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, they've always come forward and taken out time and strengthened and supported our narrative. I have spoken to them repeatedly, and I've said that the situation in the Indian occupied Kashmir is very delicate. It is deteriorating. The human rights violations have touched a new level. They were never good, but they have now deteriorated to an extent which is unspeakable. In the last over a year, the atrocities have reached a level which require international attention, because they are creating not just anxiety, they are creating insecurities and threatening the peace and stability of the region. I honestly feel OIC is an important forum. They have had a traditional position on Jammu and Kashmir. They have not just reiterated their position. The last meeting that I had, again, was a virtual meeting on the 22nd of June, which was participated by a number of foreign ministers, the Turkish foreign minister, the Saudi foreign minister. They were all there. And they are cognizant of the fact that the situation is deteriorating. On top of that, the additional worry is that the Indian designs, their expansionist designs are not just now seen towards us. You can see the incursions they've made in Ladakh, and the standoff with China is equally telling. It's a reflection of their mindset. So this is an important forum which needs to speak up. The Prime Minister addressed the United Nations General Assembly last time. He will be addressing the UN General Assembly on the 25th again. And one of the important points that he will raise in his address is the situation, the ever deteriorating situation in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
All right, Bishra sir, primarily last time he spoke very well, around 50 minutes, and Kashmir, Islamophobia, environment, these were the major issues. Sir, I just want another comment from you, since you said that India has intensified rhetoric against Pakistan. Sir, what sort of a counter policy do we have in our mind?
Well, we just have to state facts, and the facts, speak for themselves. Uh, if the Indians feel that the situation has improved, normalized, the impression they're trying to give to the world community, then they should allow international observers in. They should allow independent journalists to visit and talk to the leadership in Jammu and Kashmir, the ordinary people in Jammu and Kashmir. Then why do they have these restrictions? Why do they have a communication blackout? These are contradictions in terms. They have been undermining and violating the fourth Geneva Convention through this democratic structural change that they're trying to bring about. These are issues of concern, and Pakistan has been raising them at every level, at the OIC level, at the Security Council level, at the Human Rights Council level, and we will continue to do so, and we will continue to expose India for what it really is.
I think that holds the key, sir. Absolutely. Last quick comment on another very important factor, sir, since we do understand that the demography of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been changed. Plus, we are hearing on almost daily basis that certificates are not being issued to the Muslims. Rather, these new domiciles are being given to so many people. You also mentioned about it, who are primarily Hindus, and they are not the residents of Kashmir. So, sir, this is primarily, exactly the same philosophy that at some stage, if a referendum sort of a thing takes place, it could give a very different result.
But that's their design. That is their long-term objective. But what they do not realize is that they are alienating the Kashmiris further. They have not. Kashmiris that had sympathies with Delhi are now alienated. They are very crossed. They are very unhappy with the policies that are being pursued there. And now there are voices within India that are questioning the raison d'etre of this policy, and they feel it has boomeranged. They feel it's been counterproductive, and they are losing more, and they haven't been able to win the hearts and minds of people. In fact, they've alienated people. And this, they can add, thousands more, and that's their intention. But millions who already are living there will not be, they will not accept them. They will always remain aliens to them, and it will further deteriorate the situation and create a constant friction. People who are moving into the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, they have to be cognizant of the fact that there could be a backlash, there could be a reaction, and people will react. Who knows how and when?
All right, Shah Sahab, thank you very much for your time, sir, and thank you very much for the update. So, exactly, Shah Sahab was saying that primarily when we talk about the demographic changes, they are taking place, but sir, I think we should be concerned about that also, because maybe
1.6 million domiciles in last 6 months.
Just imagine. And the total pop 1.6 means that maybe God knows how many. And there are also, whosoever is getting retired, like in military, when you retire, you get an option whether to, get a house in Lahore or Karachi or Pindi for that matter. The interesting part is, sir, most of these people who are retiring, they've been offered jobs, retired army officers and Jawans also, and they're trying to settle them there. So that is going to definitely make a lot of difference.
They are trying that, and they will continue. This is not the first time they are doing this. This has been going on for last 73 years. This is why they have not held the plebiscite as yet in last 73 years. So they think they have been waiting. So when the demographics change to the pendulum goes in their favor, that is the day they'll go out and tell the world, look, we are very democratic. Here's the plebiscite. They're mistaken. Another 1.6 million, they might want to do anything. They will not be able to. The fact is,
why is that so?
They're scared. They're scared. Otherwise, they've been able to convince sort of 1.6 million people, but generally, the tourists don't go to Kashmir anymore because they're scared for their lives. Hindus do not want to go, and they're forcing people or giving them undue incentives to go and settle in Kashmir. But non-Kashmiris, it is very difficult for non-Kashmiris to go and start living there just because they have been offered land there. So India can do all sorts of tactics. At the end of the day, they will not fail. What we need to do is, instead of doing reactive diplomacy, we need to do proactive diplomacy. We should call their bluffs in the international community at more vigorously,
expose them.
vehemently expose them. Rather than waiting for them to do something and we responding to them, we should be going ourselves and talking. As far as, if you allow me, this talk about the threat of military aggression, I've said it in the past, and in one previous question with you, on an interview with you, I said, this is just posturing. India dare not do that. India will not do that. And I was reading a few days ago, now
Primarily, sir, since you've been a soldier yourself, why do they do that? I mean, what's the purpose of doing it? It's not that you're killing the people on the other side of the border. Primarily, is it just to engage the military of the other countries, sir?
See, here's the thing. They are working in a different camp now. The camp that I'm talking about, I talked about the Quad group as well.
Yeah.
We've been talking about a two-front war that they cannot afford. They can't afford a China-Pakistan war, two-front war.
Their generals say
They are
that they
now
can
being
afford
told-
to fight 2.5
they
front war
claim
as well.
so.
Yeah, now they are being told, why not engage China on two fronts? One in South China Sea and the other one is here in Ladakh, where in with Pakistan. So China has also come out, but they think they can compete with China. That's their mistake. The fact of the matter is, India is scared and they think we will probably talk about this military aggression, but they are mistaken.
Is India being
Pakistan is
used
not
by
the
the
Pakistan.
Western powers?
India is not the China is not the China of 1962, and Pakistan is not the Pakistan of 1971. If we had nuclear weapons in 1971, history would have been different. Today, they dare not talk to us. Not only the nuclear weapons, our strategic programs, the missile program, is second to none. India, despite increasing 9% spending on their military, is still not there, and they cannot. So, I mean, they're just posturing. They cannot afford a war at this moment. 90,000 people more who have contracted coronavirus. Instead of spending money on them, they're talking about military aggression. Why? They are trying to divert international and local attention for the humiliation in Ladakh. And now, by the way, China is now talking about Arunachal Pradesh as well. They say that's Tibet, and we want to take it back.
Yep.
So India is trying to divert attention from that by talking about these things. And divert attention from what is going on inside Kashmir. Today is the 414th day of siege.
Yes.
The Kashmiris are in siege today for the 414th day. So India wants, in the international diplomacy, to divert attention from those issues and take this. What we should do is speak vehemently and aggressively.
Ma'am, quick comment and then I'll also
just a
include
small point that during
Kiani,
this
yeah.
COVID response, India faced the, I think, one of the largest migrant worker crisis.
Yep.
If they would have money, they could have addressed their miseries, not that. And then you ask that why India engages Pakistan on LOC. The reason is maybe India wants to raise the issue of civilian casualties in Kashmir conflict, so that Pakistan feels pressurized that India is causing so much human damage in Kashmir, both in occupied Kashmir and in Azad Kashmir, so that Pakistan can little bit step back from its stance to ease the lives of Kashmiri Muslims. So maybe that is what in their mind, and then they want to satisfy their domestic vote bank that see whatever humiliation we are facing in Kashmir, but we are addressing Pakistan or engaging Pakistan in an aggressively. So maybe this is the reason, and when we will have time, I have more details to
I'll
share.
definitely come back to you, ma'am. Kiani Sahab, Assalamu alaikum ji.
Assalamualaikum, how are you?
I'm good, sir. Thank you very much, Kiani Sahab, for talking to PTV World. Now, I have a question for you. First of all, Kiani Sahab, just tell us that when we say that Pakistan should adopt a very proactive foreign policy, and especially when we talk about the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, primarily when we say that we should have a proactive and aggressive attitude. Explain that to me, sir. What exactly do we need to do? How to have proactive approach? What sort of actions should be seen?
The thing is, you see, I'm in full agreement with the Honorable Foreign Minister and my other colleagues here. But please try to see the history of India as far as the Jammu and Kashmir dispute is concerned. First of all, look at the resolution which called for a plebiscite. And if you look at, there are two very important, statements in that plebiscite. It calls upon India not to deceive people, not to buy the votes, not to do this thing. And they just tell us that the tribal people who had entered the Kashmir Valley should go back. So there are two total different things. They don't even rely, right at the outset in 1940, they don't rely on India's honesty. And then look at the flimsy ground that in 1954 we signed a military agreement with the United States. They say that since Pakistan has signed the agreement with them, so therefore that plebiscite thing is nullified, or flimsy grounds. And then they keep on blundering, blunder one, fighting with China, mistaking them in, and now I look at the China-India standoff, which for the moment, it has gone down, but the blundering, the what you call the blundering continues. Now, what the thing is that as far as the proactive foreign policy is concerned, I think Pakistan is doing its utmost best. Look, the last year the Honorable Prime Minister spoke to the United Nations. He's going again. The foreign minister is with the contact group. The problem is that it is falling on deaf ears on India. The geopolitical, probably the global dynamics is such that India is taking advantage of the dynamics. What's happening here? Our missions are in continuous contact with the host governments, the important host governments, trying to apprise them of the humanitarian catastrophe which is taking place in the occupied Kashmir for the last 1 year, falling on deaf ears again. Now, China has given them a hammering. You look at the blundering again. They revoked the Article 370 without realizing that, okay, you are appeasing the Hindu population and okay, Pakistan can be ignored. But they didn't realize that the Ladakh is a contentious issue between China and India. So this is something, again, a big blunder by India. So I think what we need to do, I have been saying it for a long time, and that our parliamentarians should engage their counterparts in very important capitals, and the media and the what you call mainstream media editors should talk to their counterparts and tell them that, look, the humanitarian aspect is something which you are ignoring. They can bring in 1 million and 100 million people and settle them in what you call the Indian occupied Kashmir. Same thing the Israelis have done, the settlers, trying to reduce the number of people in what you call in Palestine. But this is not going to work. I think we need to engage them at the highest level. This time, if the Prime Minister is going, this is my own independent. Why doesn't he take a bipartisan parliamentary delegation with him? Let these people interact with their own counterparts and tell them, and there's a group of Pakistani diplomats to go with them, the Foreign Office people, who should be able to give them the advice. Let them talk to the US Congress, the senators at this time, at this very crucial time when the United States is going to election time. Let this issue also be highlighted. This is something which we need to do, because India should not go scot-free. And last thing, sir, India wants to become a permanent member of the United Nations. It violates the UN resolutions. It acts in a manner which is, believe or not, even the small countries, unimportant countries would not do. This is what India is doing. And it then cries out and says that nobody is looking at me and nobody wants to support India to become a permanent member. Permanent membership calls for a very high responsibility, which India is not reflecting.
All right. Now, ma'am, there is another very important point. Since we were talking about the foreign policy and it should have a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. And then it reminds me of a very interesting step taken by the previous government of Mr. Nawaz Sharif, where he engaged certain parliamentarians, as just mentioned by Honorable Ambassador, and those were sent For example, Rana Sahab, who passed away recently, was an MNA from Faisalabad. He went to France, and when he met the French parliamentarians, he said most of them were very ignorant about the actual Kashmir issue. Maybe they must have heard about it, but nobody knew the details, and they were so excited to work with Pakistan. I think those sort of steps should be taken.
Yes, this is a
Rather
very,
than just depending on your ambassadors and the team there, your parliamentarians, because they would meet the parliamentarians,
Yeah.
and then that is the right approach, I guess.
This is a very good idea, but I think I believe in inclusive policy making. So maybe number one, we need to build capacity of our parliamentarians on Kashmir issues, and then the delegation should be a combination of practitioner, academician, and the parliamentarian.
Should have a good team.
Yeah, so that they can do the best. Otherwise, and we already have chairman Kashmir Committee and Parliamentary Kashmir Committee, which is doing a very good job in both on domestic and international front to raise the Kashmir issue whenever it is required, and to correlate Kashmir issue with different international days. For example, International Day for Peace, International Day for Human Rights, International Day against the aggression, or all those things. So I think Kashmir Committee, Parliamentarian Kashmir Committee is also doing a good job, but definitely we need it should be a teamwork. It should be a combination of all or different segments, social segments.
All right. Now, talking about the Kashmir Committee, honestly speaking, I don't think most of the Pakistanis are satisfied with the role of the Kashmir Committee. Earlier, God knows what Maulana Sahib had been doing in this regard. But, sir,
But
honestly,
now there is change of leadership.
Obviously, ma'am,
Yeah.
that's there. But, the time which we had earlier wasted, which was very productive,
Yes.
it's just like, not utilizing your first 15 overs in a one-day cricket match. So, we could have capitalized at that time. But still, I mean, whatever is happening at the moment as we speak, there are huge changes. 414th day since the curfew. You're talking about the abrogation of Article 370, 35A, taking away the special status. The reality on ground has changed. Don't you think this is the time then we should also look that, a different kind of a formula is needed to counter this issue?
Faisal, if you allow me, although I'm not the spokesperson of the government, but before I answer that, I think I'm not exactly sure when, but in the last 2 years, or probably before the start of COVID, actually somewhere last year, there was a group of parliamentarians which was sent out all over the world by this government to advocate Pakistan's case, especially after the 5th of August 2009. So I think after August 2019, there was an initiative like that was taken. So the government is oblivious to the fact that this needs to be done.
After the UN speech of the Prime Minister.
Yes. However, as I said, I'm not the spokesperson of the government, but as a Pakistani, it is my duty to ask this question. When we are facing an external enemy like India, who's trying everything to defeat us in FATF forum, our politicians, you are talking about all-inclusive politicians, taking them everywhere. They are trying to destabilize our efforts to come out of FATF ban.
Realist, yeah.
As of day before yesterday, they were holding an APC and talking all ill. They did not vote in the favor of FATF. So I think I'm sorry to say, they're working on Indian agenda. Who was the most happy for them not voting for FATF? Indians. You see the Indian media after that vote in the joint session of parliament.
They find a reason and then they capitalize on that.
The only people outside Pakistan who were happy were the Indians. So that means they were playing in the hands of Indians. So how can we, if we want this Kashmir issue to be internationalized, we as a nation have to unite first and put our differences in the back, and as a nation think about what we need to do. So right now, India, I must say, I don't have conclusive evidence to say, but I think there is an Indian hand which made its inroads into these political parties and asked them at a very critical juncture to sit against the government, so that we can't talk about. Today, the 75th session of the UN General Assembly is starting, and 2 days before, our politicians are talking about destabilizing government, and they did not vote for FATF. So there is a hidden agenda which So unfortunately, the politicians have to come together. I think the government is trying its best, but when we at home are fighting with people inside, how can we go and fight with our external enemy? So these people need to realize that this is a national
At least,
cause.
you know, when you
Kashmir
talk
is a
about the
national
political part,
cause.
they could have so many differences.
And
But I
then
think when it
just a
comes to the
small-
sovereignty of your country, they need to be on the same
They
page.
should have been united on FATF
Yeah,
at least.
and I think the government of Azad Jammu and Kashmir should also be on board. I've seen President Masood Khan doing
Yeah.
great job in explaining Kashmir conflict to international audience, because you know, like, we need a combination of good language, good communication skills, strong grip on the history and issue of Kashmir, and then anyone can go and talk about Kashmir and talk to international community about it. And another thing that, as
But there are very smart parliamentarians in the parliament.
yeah,
So there are some very
Definitely.
so you
Yeah,
can take
definitely.
Young, energetic blood, sir.
yeah. So another thing, that when Modi says that Kashmir, and as they are settling people and all this issue, 120 million domiciles, but you know, Kashmir, the reality and the Modi's claim would be compatible the day when Kashmir would be an open place for international media. Kashmir is the least reported conflict of the world.
Unfortunately,
Kashmir is
yes.
sieged, and it's not like now, it is for last 73 years. The day Modi would allow international observers, international media, international organization, UNO, UNHCR, UNICEF, UNDP to work in Kashmir, that day Modi would be able to tell people that everything is normal
Exactly,
in
you know,
Kashmir. And the
And as
day
foreign
hiding
minister was
everything
saying,
under the
when they
cover,
allow the foreign observers to go in and see
they
it.
would never do that because
international development agencies, if the
They are so-
situation
but that's the
is so
problem.
good that
But
people
nobody
would
raises
come.
the voice that we were not allowed to go inside that territory for, or maybe it's whenever they're taken, they're just shown certain
I think
areas.
last
And
year,
that's
Not
it.
even, they don't, they
Last
don't
year-
even take
Sir,
them.
if you allow me, sir, let me put the same point to Ambassador Saab. Now, Ambassador Saab, talking about that this is what Pakistan needs to do, this is what the Indians want. I would like you to, you know, also comment, but let me share a very interesting story. I remember the former External Affairs Minister of India, Modi's first government, I'm talking, Sushma Swaraj, who passed away. I think a day or maybe two before her death, when this Article 370 was abrogated, she said that, you know, thank God this has been done in my life. So, you know, the idea behind this, I mean, wasn't something very new. They always wanted it. Now, Ambassador Saab, whenever I get a chance to meet the Western ambassadors in Pakistan and Islamabad, and whenever we get to talk about the Kashmir issue, mostly they believe that it's a bilateral issue. That's the stance their government has taken. Maybe their personal point of view could be different. How to go about it, sir?
So the thing is that apart from the wars, unfortunately, the two countries have fought. But Pakistan's this Jammu and Kashmir dispute is Pakistan stand is a principled one, on which we all the parties, political parties in the country are on one page. There has been no compromise, neither there would be any compromise. And India knows it. Either the whole world knows it. Now the thing is, when you talk about democracy, democracy is chaotic throughout the world. But when it comes to a principled stand, I can assure you that all the political parties would come they're already on one page and they will support the government. That I can assure you, I think. Second thing is, sir, that at this time, as the Honorable Prime Minister goes to the United States to address the United Nations General Assembly, I think our focus should be, meaning for one, Pakistan is a democratic country. It has institutions. The parliamentarians are the voice of the people. We have elected them. So I do not think for a minute that I can, pick and choose and say that this is somebody who has a different agenda. I think we should be able to trust these parliament. You can choose. Naturally, you can choose that this one, will become part of a group. Please trust them. Let them go. They should be given a briefing. I have seen when I was in the Foreign Office, in the protocol, and the Afghan war was going on, I can assure you that the U.S. congressmen and the German Bundestag people, other used to come, and their embassy, and they used to be, and a small group of their foreign office was part of them, who used to give them briefing papers, and you should advise them and sit with them. I think it is time now, sir, that our parliamentarians, who are the voice of the people, should be counteracting with their counterparts. And I again reiterate, in the important capitals, let the United Nations, this time should be the first one. Let them talk to the U.S. congressmen and tell them that, look, you are talking about human rights violations, and the human rights is so close to your heart. What about the Kashmiris in the occupied Kashmir? They've been deprived their rights, and India is saying that everything is normal. If India is everything normal, let them lift the restrictions which have been imposed upon them, and then you will see, and allow those people to lead normal lives. And the other last thing is,
this is going to go on like this.
Absolutely. So when would it end? Why not implement the UN resolution on plebiscite? Why not? And sir, you have talked
But
about
the problem
bilateral.
is, sir,
It is,
I mean,
sir,
I think the question
sir,
should
allow
not
me,
be
sir,
when
just,
to end. It should be
just,
how to end it.
sir, just let me say to you, my own thing is, sir, my own opinion is that the sufferings of the Kashmiri people will only end when Pakistan and India sit across the table, because there are the party to this conflict, in dispute, India, Pakistan, and the Kashmiris themselves. Sit across the table, talk. Some sense should prevail within the Modi government that this revocation of Article 370 or the restriction imposed, draconian laws imposed on Indian Kashmir will not work. It has not worked up till now. He wants to appease the Hindus till what? Till what time would they appease? And the last thing they say that investment will come in Indian occupied Kashmir, I think is sadly mistaken. Do you think anybody would take his money and go to this in Indian occupied Kashmir and endanger his money, endanger his own life? Nobody's going to do that. We'll have to wait. Will sanity prevail within the Indian Modi government? I think all governments at one time, when they're pushed to the wall, look for a dialogue, and let's hope that time is coming near.
All right. Ma'am, now, whenever Congress is in opposition, they would always go against the BJP's policies primarily. And now it seems that, they're really concerned what's going on in Kashmir. And I mean, the way we hear from their parliamentarians. The interesting part is that once they're in power, I mean, they would exactly act the way BJP is. So, ma'am, which face to trust, which one not to trust? And then when we make our own policy, you believe that whichever government is in place, we need to have a very consistent policy. Same for both. Or you believe if Congress comes into power, things would change?
First of all, we should only trust our national aspirations and national interest. So, but what we can do is to do consistent efforts to forge bilateral relationship based on peace and harmony and mutual coexistence with the neighboring state. But we need two to tango. So it is not possible when with only if we are willing to do that. It is possible if the Indian side is willing to do that. And as you asked the question regarding the actors in Kashmir conflict, that who are the basic parties, Indian government under Congress, Nehru signed the agreement with with Umar Abdullah, the Kashmiri leader, and after which he incorporated Article 370 in Indian Constitution. So India acknowledged Kashmiris as the legitimate party to Kashmir conflict.
Okay.
And then it was again Congress which signed Shimla agreement with government of Pakistan, recognizing Pakistan as the legitimate party to Kashmir conflict, because when Indira Gandhi signed the agreement, and it was written, one of the clauses, that Pakistan and India would bilaterally discuss and find the solution of Kashmir conflict. So basically, with Indian consent of Indian governments under Congress, and even BJP, Atal Bihari Vajpayee said that Kashmir, BJP government initiated talks with former President Musharraf to resolve Kashmir as a conflict, and they also accepted Kashmiris as one of the party to the conflict. So actually, it is India which is talking, or which accepted three legitimate parties to the conflict. So this is one point which we need to know and understand. while talking about the actors. And then if we see the secondary actors, then secondary actors in Kashmir conflict are all those countries which would be affected if Kashmir conflict is not been resolved peacefully by Pakistan and India, and the effect of any war.
What's the probability of this this problem or the issue or whatever you may call it? I mean, do you think this is going to be sorted out peacefully?
I'm an academician,
as
so
they say in
I am
Urdu,
optimistic because
"Sheh
we
rag
have
hai
achieved.
and atoot ang hai."
We have already achieved this threshold during Musharraf and Manmohan Singh governments. So we were about to reach to the
Then Mr. Advani came in.
but his role was not that vital or negative.
I tell you what, Advani was much better than this
yes, Ajit
guy. I
Doval.
would have Ajit Doval or even
Modi.
Narendra Modi. I would have been very happy if Advani was the Prime Minister of
me
India.
too.
Much
Advani
better
was
than
the
him.
person who visited Jinnah's Mizar in
Advani was a
Karachi.
saner person in Indian BJP.
Yeah, Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
Atal Bihari Vajpayee was much better than this guy.
Their foreign minister
chai
at that
wala.
time, who's written a book also.
Mani Shankar.
Mani Shankar is from Congress.
Yeah, so there were good names. So I'm not that pessimistic, but you know, ball is in the court of Indian voters. The day they would be able to take sane decisions and sensible decisions for the long-term future of their own country, things would be better. And as you said, that why Indian media is so aggressive and portraying war as something very glamorous.
Because they are like this with their government.
Yes, because this is the narrative which Modi successfully sold during election campaign. Modi
They wouldn't
has,
print a story
yeah,
unless until they are given the
yeah,
proper details in black and white.
Indian election, unlike elections in America, in
Pakistan.
England or Pakistan, you want to win an Indian election, you have to have anti-Pakistan rhetoric to win the vote.
Anti-Pakistan sentiments,
Anti-Muslim and
they
anti-Pakistan.
sell in India.
So
We
this
don't
is
do
the
that,
only
they
way.
do. They are so Pakistan-centric, unfortunately.
Because they
Obsessed.
She was talking.
Obsessed.
They would have accepted Kashmiris on papers, but the real fact is that, and you can cross-verify that, when any Pakistani leader goes to Delhi, they don't let the Kashmiri leaders meet the Pakistani leadership because they want to cordon them off. Why would you want to do that?
if everything is
And when
so
Nawaz Sharif
rosy
went, he
in
did not
Kashmir.
meet them. But interestingly, prior to that, one of our ambassador, High Commissioner, I think that it was Dr. Basit, if I'm not
Yeah.
wrong, right? He met the Hurriyat leaders and there was
Yes.
this hue and cry all over India. And right after that, every other member, the
Yeah.
secretaries and whoever was working, they were being followed by their intelligence agencies, harassed and everything. You know, this
I
is
want
what
to
they
talk
do.
about something that basically the topic of, is there really a threat of Indian aggression? Let's qualify what India is capable of. 5 Rafales, they will take 5 years. You, and I know your background, a little background of yours, so I can know that you can talk about it. 5 Rafales will take 5 years to be actually deployed and used in this environment. So if they are having those celebrations for those Rafales, what has India got right now? It's engaged with China in Ladakh, failed negotiations, they've lost 2,200 square kilometers or more probably to India, to China in last 6 months. China is now talking about taking Arunachal Pradesh as well, and they're talking about waging a war with Pakistan. They could not. They sent 1 plane or 2 planes in night time at Balakot and destroyed few trees and killed some crows. And we responded, we threw them down in daylight. We attacked them by design in broad daylight. So what are the Indians thinking about?
Indian submarine be directed in the
So
Interestingly,
But-
our
like we failed all the
Air
other
Force
times.
chief was content about it, but in fact, that could have triggered something different.
Yeah,
We
and-
could-
and
that was a
one-
sitting duck for us.
Yeah, and
we
one
did
point
not.
that we are expecting rationality from the radical regime of Mr. Modi, and when radicalism enters, rationality leaves. So we have to calculate this one
Well,
thing.
that's a
is-
very interesting philosophy, ma'am. Let's see.
But
But
I have just one correction
comment,
with a quick comment, and with due respect to the ambassador, as far as my information goes, I don't mean to be disrespectful to him, he's much senior. As far as I know, Prime Minister Imran Khan is not going to New York tomorrow. He's going to address the UN General Assembly session
Via video
virtually.
link.
via video link.
This is-
So
this is- this is exactly
nobody from
my
Pakistan, the delegation
apologies
is
for
not
my
going.
mistake. It's my
And
mistake.
the reason is the local city government of New York has put a ban that people cannot come in for the UN General Assembly.
Yeah.
So these are very
there'll be-
special
yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah.
So the diplomacy, whatever we are talking about, rightly, as the former ambassador pointed out, we'll probably have to wait till we are out of Corona time.
Let's hope, sir. Let's hope. Ambassador Saab, last quick comment, sir. Totally running out of time. Over to you.
I'd like to apologize. It was a latest development which I okay. If he's going to address virtually, I think our own people, parliamentarians, can do the same with their counterpart. Nevertheless, what I would say, sir, is that that we need to keep on focusing on this issue of on the humanitarian aspect of what is happening in Kashmir. And my own opinion is that OIC, I think we have been focusing, but it's not working as far as OIC is concerned. I think we need to enlarge our focus on countries which matter humanitarian, the countries for which humanitarian aspect is extremely important, and these are the Western countries where India would listen to them. India would not listen to these countries. Unfortunately, this is a fact of life.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Saab, for your comments, sir. It was a pleasure having you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anjua Saab.
Thank you.
And that's all we have for this hour. Inshallah, I'll see you tomorrow at 8. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Khuda Hafiz.